I was giving lesson to one of my students that I hadn't seen in a few months, and he's 14, 15, and he has a brother that he's 12 years old, and his brother used to play tennis, and he told me that his brother had just quit playing. And I think that's one thing that we don't really talk about too much, when kids, when they decide that they want to start playing tennis, we don't really nobody really explains the difference emotionally, how it's going to be dealing with a sport that is like, okay, it's a one player, it's just you playing, or a team sport like playing football, like playing soccer, or playing basketball. Tennis is a sport that I always have the idea that it's kind of a lonely sport. You have, if you win, all the credit goes to you. If you lose, you are the one person completely responsible of that setback, of that failure. And it's important to pay attention. I think it's important to have a conversation with that, like about that, with the kids when they're trying to decide what they're gonna do. It's probably that's a good thing, that parents, that they have a kid that is deciding which sports he's gonna go. He probably likes tennis, and he likes another two different sports, probably basketball, probably baseball or volleyball. And it's important to let him know, okay, this is the difference that you're gonna have to face with when you play this sport, because this is a team sport and this is not a team sport. And the truth is that in tennis, is very important. This is something that I think that is very important for kids to understand, and it's something that juniors and even adults sometimes forget about tennis. Tennis is a sport where you have to learn. If you want to be a tennis player, unless you want to be, it's a hobby and you're gonna have fun, that's good. If you want to be competitive, it's a sport where you're gonna be beaten a lot. You're gonna be knocked down a lot. It's a sport where you have to learn to deal with failure and setbacks a lot, because most of the times they're not gonna be, unless you're an exceptional player. Many times you're gonna lose. Probably most of the times you're probably gonna have a higher percentage of losses than wins. If we go and see the best players in the world, if we grab the top 10 and we say, okay, which are the players that usually win the tournaments? Which are the players that probably have a higher percentage of winning matches than losing, or winning tournaments? And it's usually the one, two, and if player number 3 in the rank could be, if it's a 3 and a 4 that they're not very solid, we can see it making it to the finals or the semifinals, but they have a really hard time. Very little times they get to be the number 1. So we have to look at it as a sport where, if you don't learn, one thing that I like to tell the kids that I train is if you don't learn the art of letting go, if you don't learn the skill of moving on quick, you're going to struggle a lot emotionally. And the tennis player, we are used to look at ourselves many times the way it depends how we did in the last match. It depends how we did in the last tournament. And that's a difficult trait, or that's a difficult thing to break. It's a difficult habit to break. You really have to do a lot of work. You really have to be playing for a long time. And sometimes even you can see players that are world-class players, and they're still very emotional. They still have a hard time dealing with losses. They still have a hard time dealing with the pressure of playing tennis at a high level, week after week, year after year. I like to train the kids, and that's the reason why I emphasize on, don't pay attention to the result. As you're growing, pay attention more on becoming a better player, on getting better every single day. If you can get better 1% every single day, or every single week, going and focus on that. Don't focus so much on the results, because the results, they're gonna take, in tennis, Tennis, you cannot break the rule. It's very rare that a kid or a person, can really advance fast. We usually move steady, slow and steady, slow and steady, and that's when our game starts going up. But it's very important to pay attention to that. We're gonna have we win a lot of points, we lose a lot of points. You play one point that can destroy you emotionally, and you only have 25 seconds to move on to the next point. So those are the things that we need to explain to the kids, and those are things that even adults, we deal with that. So imagine a kid when they don't know how to deal with that. They don't know they're gonna find themselves in that situation. So it's important to have that kind of communication, that kind of conversation with them. And it's also important to remember that to talk to, even when you're a grown adult like me, it's important to remember and put yourself in that situation and say, okay, you got to remember that you're playing a sport where you're going to lose a lot, And the truth is that when you win tournaments, when you win something big, you forget right away. What you usually keep in your mind is the losses that you have had in the tournaments. It's not, you win one tournament, and usually that win is not gonna carry you for the next 2 or 3 months. You can have one loss in a tournament, in not even a tournament, in a practice match, and you can carry that loss for weeks or even months in your head, and destroying your self-image, and destroying your confidence, and destroying your game, the bravery, being bold, and trying to do things, trying to move forward and be aggressive with your game. It can completely destroy the way you approach the game, and the way you look at yourself, and the way you feel out there, and the way you look at the other opponents, and the way you feel on a certain surface, and the way you feel. I mean, it's just so many things that can go wrong. That's why it's so important. I emphasize a lot on the kids to say, don't focus on the results. You got to focus on becoming a better player. Start hitting the ball better, start hitting the ball clean, start being more consistent, and then little by little you're moving forward. But the moment, it's been proven on research, on a Harvard research actually, that when as kids that like to draw, that they like to draw just by nature, and they will say, okay, draw me something, and they will love doing it. And the moment they start giving them reward for drawing something, the kids are starting thinking about the reward. So they will rush doing the drawings, and when they stop getting the rewards, they were not happy with it, and they didn't want to keep drawing anymore. So that's how much, when we don't have the eyes on the right place, that's how much it can affect us. And this is something that I just think it's important to talk to the kids about this. And this is a topic that you always have to go back to this and talk to them at every age, on every period, because it's an emotional thing. That tennis, like I said, sometimes it only takes one match to completely destroy your self-image. And that match, it can come down to just one point that turned things around, and you remember that point, and you have that point in your head, sometimes for years. I remember I have losses that I had when I was juniors, that was more than 30 years, 40 years ago, and I still remember them, and I still remember very clear that point that marked me. Even till now, I remember that. Eventually, I learned to compete and try to move that away from my mind. But it's something that if I didn't do it consistently, I could tell right away when it was coming back for me. I hope you like it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.